Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here, Monday the 20th of April 2020. And hot on the heels of the success yesterday of the first start, then we know we've got a couple of things to attend to, and as quite rightly mentioned by John, I think it was, then we've got to keep moving on. I can't remember the exact term that he used. Anyway, press on. I think that was it. So we're going to press on. So we know that we've got this oil leak to attend to, which is coming from the seam between the inner timing cover and the right hand crankcase half. It seems to be coming from the gasket, so we suspect that, but there might be a low spot on one of the mating surfaces. We'll have to see. We also know that the left hand pot ran hotter than the right. The carbs haven't been tuned yet, but neither has the timing from static. But we've got to take all this timing side off anyway, which includes the points and the auto advance unit. So although we'll mark them up to get them roughly right in the back in the right position, we're going to need to retime anyway. So we'll sort of try and get two jobs done in one. So first thing first, we'll get this timing cover off. So I won't film any of that because with previous episodes of the restoration of this bike, you'll have seen the insides of this and it being put together. But basically what we've got to do is remove the footrest, remove the clutch cable, and remove the gear lever pedal and the kickstart pedal, and that will enable us then to take the outer cover off. And then we've got screws on the inside, a few screws on the inside. We've got to take off the points, back plate and the auto advance unit, and I think we've got then the gear lever return spring, kickstart lever return spring, and plate, and then we can just take the inner cover off. Oh yeah, we've got to take the tacho drive off too, because we've got to get spindle out of there before we can pull the cover off, which is a bit of a shame. There's a lovely little tab washer on there that I was really proud of securing because they're quite scarce, but I've got a spare if that one doesn't come off too well. But we should be alright. So pretty straightforward disassembly, really, not too difficult at all. So what I'll do is I'll get on with this, and probably tomorrow when I'm back on this, as it's evening now, then I will bring you back and we'll remove the inner cover gently so we can all discover what's behind it, what the cause might be. Oh, and what I forgot to say before I do all that, then the oil will be being gravity fed down to the pump at the minute, so we'll probably need to drain the oil out of the frame as well. That'll be the first job, but it should be reusable anyway. I'm not going to actually change it after less than 5 minutes running. Right, we'll get on. Right everyone, inner case off next evening, and there it is, the inside face of it. And apologies, I was going to film this for you coming off, but I was gently teasing it off as you do, and off it popped as good as gold, so I missed that bit. But haven't touched anything yet. I've just been doing a bit of inspection. So the first thing is, obviously without taking the gasket off, there's no break in the gasket, but I have noticed that underneath the oil pump there, it doesn't look as though it's squeezed down the film of silicone. You can just see under that stud with the nut there's a sort of a cloudy film there, so that's not been compressed. So then you think about, well, are the surfaces a bit low? And I've not checked those yet, but if you look at the corresponding surface on the cover, you can actually still see all the milling machining marks across that, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, I think I've found the problem, And if you look a bit more closely, and I turn the torch there, can you see that little dimple? Just there in the case. And that remarkably lines up with that stud for the oil pump. And that stud is prouder than these two, and I think the case is fouling on the tip of that stud. So the first thing we're going to do is just take the tab washer off that, double nut it and screw that in about 3 or 4 turns, because undoubtedly, let's get the torch in the right place, around this side might be better, there it is, that's better. It's been fouling that significantly because it's made an impression on it. I think that's the problem. Now the other thing to check as well is you'll notice on one of the mounting screw holes here there's a locating dowel next to that. I've checked that that's not fouling, i.e. there's plenty of room in the hole there for the locating dowel underneath the, there it is. You can see the hole there underneath the right hand stud. There's a hole for the screw and next to it is the locating dowel. So there's plenty of room there for that. So I think that's what the problem is. So as I say, I'm just going to, there's a tab washer. Where are we? There we are. There's the torch there, look, on that stud. There's a small tab washer on that with a plain quarter UNF. I've got other UNF nuts. So we'll undo that. We'll take the tab washer off gently, undo that nut, at least 2 turns, put another nut on and see if we can screw that stud in. And if we can't screw it in far enough, obviously it can, as we call, get dressed. Right, let's see how we get on. Right, everyone, here's the after, and you can see we're looking at that stud there, and you can see I've managed to wind that in 2.5 turns. It's much flusher now to the nut, even more so than the these two on the left here. So I think that's going to be okay. I'll do a lot of checking around elsewhere, and obviously we'll take this gasket off carefully and check the surface on the other side. And then what I'm going to do is put the case on, just the inner case with its inner screws, and then probably refill the oil tank with oil, and we'll see if it starts weeping out like it did before we started the engine up. And once we'd oiled it up, it was leaking then, so it'll be apparent pretty much straight away. So interesting fix. Right, mating surfaces all cleaned up on the case there. Checked them with a straight edge. They're all fine actually, and even on the crankcase there I can see the original milling marks for that face, so we're okay. As we said yesterday, also with the inner case itself. Regarding gaskets, I mean the gasket that I've taken off is okay. It's not broken. There is a slight tear in it at one point, but better safe than sorry. I'm going to put a new one on. So I'm just going to wipe these faces down now with a bit of degreaser, just to make sure we get any remnants of oil off, and then we'll use the silicone sealer, thin smear of it on each face either side of the gasket, and then we should be there and we can put it back together. Not too bad a job at all, to be honest. Oh, and I should just say that I'm not going to video this. This is already documented as part of the restoration when we put the timing cases together then. So it's exactly the same, except for the fact now we should have good mating faces all the way around, and no oil pump stud affecting the seating. Right, let's get on. Right, all back together, and the next morning, so we've allowed the smear of sealer to seal, and you can see there, just up towards the right above the oil pressure warning line switch, that now we've got the cases screwed down properly, that the smear of sealer is squeezed out, which is good news. Now we didn't have that before, so I'm pretty confident that's fixed the problem. So we'll just give it a bit of a clean up, and then we'll refill the oil tank, and we'll leave it to stand and see what happens. And the garage floor is all cleaned up, ready to go, so we can spot any leaks. But hopefully that's it for now. So we'll leave it there, and well, actually I'll pop back in a few hours just to do the final clip and see if we can ensure that this is either sealed, or if we see any oil weeping from it, I'll bring you back then. Right everyone, there we are. She's had oil in her now for 6 hours or so, and not a hint of a weep, none on the floor, and nothing coming out underneath the case. So I think we're good to go. She's got 4 pints of oil in the spine tank, and the maximum is 5, so there's plenty of weight there to gravity feed it through the lines that it did before. So I think if we had the same problem, it would have started dripping by now, or at least showing some signs of oil coming out on the underside of the inner timing case there, which it doesn't, so that's good news. And the other job that I have quickly done is, since receiving a second 55-degree banjo for the carbs, then I've taken the fuel lines off and routed them properly. So from the taps, the lines now go inside the air filter hose to the banjo here, and then on the inside of that is another stub out for the balance pipe, which you can just see going across there. So that's all tidied up as well, and that makes it look much neater. I hadn't noticed that before, so thanks. Was it Harry who pointed that out? Thanks, appreciated. So what I'm going to do next then is time it up again, and then at some point we'll have another fire up. I'm also going to check this exhaust pipe isn't blowing at the top here, because if it's getting air in there, then it might explain why the pipe gets hot. But I did notice the left-hand pot in general was getting hot, so I think it was timing originally when we started it up. And you can see that pipe isn't perfect, but it has cleaned up pretty well. So we'll do another precise job, as precise as we can with static timing, and then once we start it next time, we'll get the strobe out as soon as possible. Might have it linked up ready. So she's all cleaned up again. Try and get a decent view of her. So much bloody kit in here. And ready to go. Everything seems to be functioning pretty well on it. Electrics are all good. So we'll be back again soon for another run. In the meantime, I need to contact the engineer about the Fury head. A few bits and pieces we can do on that before the head comes, but not much really. So what we might do in the meantime then is recommission the Bandit and clean that up, as well as it's looking a little grubby, so it needs a bit of a spring clean. But the reason why we need to recommission it is because the bike was lent to me again, so we could take the auto advance unit off it, and for a friend to get replicas made. He's done a fantastic job, as always. So we need to reinstall the auto advance unit and the points, and obviously that means timing it up, and this is a pig to time because only one of the point sets is individually adjustable timing wise on its own sort of slave back plate. The other one isn't, and there's only one timing groove on the crank, and this is 180 degree, and I believe that corresponds to the set of points that doesn't have the slave back plate. So it's all a bit complicated, but I'll explain it when we do it next time. But yeah, hopefully soon then we'll have a session on that, and also we do a bit more on the history of it as well, just to really give you some details on the back of snippets I've given you before, and the first video I ever posted on YouTube, which is still there, which is 1.5 minute video of this running when we first got it going, which was probably about 2013, I think. Right, that's it for now. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Thanks for interest, comments and subscriptions. I'll always like the comments and the dialogue and the collaboration, the sort of community spirit. It's great fun, so thanks again, and see you all again soon. Cheers, bye-bye.